guys, I'm in here. I want to talk about doing the inner healing work. This is when you heal the inner child within you. And this is something I had to really work on when it came to becoming a full-fledged human being. And I'm still working on a daily basis. I struggle with this because the fact that I also have a 3-year-old and sometimes he pushes my buttons to the limits. So it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? And many of you who are parents understand the nature of what it's like to raise kids. If you have more than one kid, then it's like, God, I don't know how you guys keep your sanity with that. I struggle with one, and I'm like, what am I doing? And it's really about understanding the nature of who you really are in the end, you know. And a lot of people get into relationships that are toxic, that end up becoming toxic. It's like the karmic relationship, and the karmic relationship is pretty much the nature of um, doing your own duty instead of actually understanding why you're in that relationship in the first place. And a lot of I've talked to a lot of men in this, and men seem to be victims in this situation, especially because we women want to be taken care of sometimes, and we still follow the old tradition in many cases. But even if they women work and all that and come home and they just want to be able to have that partnership with their man, and it's just it can be very difficult because you get lost in translation a lot of times when you go into relationships. And one thing I had to really understand is, if you're not healthy and whole, you're not going to help the other person be healthy and whole either. That person can only carry so much on their shoulders to the point where they also explode as well. This is why it's so important when it comes to relationships that you come as one, as a whole and stuff. There was a guru that I was listening to named Paramsanithianda, and Paramsanithianda made this analogy which made perfect sense to me. I was making a little joke out of it. I was like, 1 + 1 = a window. If anybody knows that joke, let me know. Leave a comment saying if you heard that joke before when you were a kid, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just knowing the nature of 1 + 1 = 1. All right, it's not two. And what they meant when he meant by that is, when marriage people come together, the union is one. So we have to be very honest about that. When you come together as a union, as one, you come together as a point of really seeing the other person for who they are. You really see them deep down in who they are, the brokenness and everything. But you're not there to change the other person. When you come into a relationship, when you're two together, but that's that you're also two people. All right, you have two separate identities as well. So we have to be understanding of that. But if you come with a baggage and the other person has a lot of baggage, and you come together as one, there's going to be a lot more conflict. All right, because you're expecting the other person to you're expecting the other person to meet your needs that you couldn't have met yourself. You're expecting the other person to make you feel whole and healthy. You're expecting the other person to be that God figure in your life. That's not what they're here for. They want a partnership together in a union, but you're expecting a lot of it too much that they cannot meet. Your unhappiness has to do with your unwillingness to see within yourself the truth of what is really going on. And what I mean by that is, you're not willing to do the work within you to see why you're unhappy. What was the cause in your own past that created the present in your life? See, we don't really understand that. We don't really like to see that, because the fact that we don't believe that we deserve to be, happy. And happiness is not something to take in lightly either. But sometimes we do get into relationships because we don't think we are good enough to meet someone better. And a lot of times we have to be honest with ourselves, the true nature of who we really are. When you're whole, you can help the other person to be whole. When you are not whole, you can also create a lot of toxicity down the road. Not just in your relationship with your spouse or with your partner, but you can also do that to your children. Understand, toxic parents create toxic children. I know it sounds harsh, but it's kind of the reality. Because children pick up the energy of the parents. If parents are not the greatest role models, the children will learn from that experience. They learn from their parents. Their parents are their teachers, and because the parents are their teachers, the children do the same thing. That's how they mirror. It's called mirror work. There's neurons in the brain that states that. I don't know exactly where in the brain. I forget. I was doing. I was studying the brain. I completely forget where it is. but we mirror each other. The neurons in our brains mirror the other person, what they like, what they are. So we have to be very cautious about that. We need to be honest and evaluating our core. Why were we with this person? What made us attracted to them? And sometimes you may have to go back to basics to know that. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's been married for a long time, and I told him, you may have lost a spontaneity in the relationship. There's something in it that you lost. So therefore, you have to go back to basics and go. Maybe sometimes you want to go back to basics and see what was missing. But the first thing is, before you're going to do that, do your work. Do what's going on within you that's really causing that drift. If you expect everybody else to change, they're not going to change. They're going to resist the change. The only way things are going to change is when you change yourself. And I had to really understand this because I was so demanding in my relationship. I was acting like my parents, and when I was acting like my parents in the relationship, like a nagging, partner, the other person was defensive. They were on the fence, and knowing that when they are on the fence, they don't want to change. They don't want to be better. What they want to do is, they resist it, and you keep demanding. You expecting things to change. You expect things to work out, because you're coming from a place of pain. You're not coming into that place of mutual agreement. And because you don't come into a mutual agreement, this pain that you feel is only going to grow because the fact that you still demand that the other person meets that need or want or whatever the case may be. It may be grocery shopping. Like you go to grocery shopping, you come back and you forgot something, and your spouse is upset with them. Well, that spouse can actually go out and still go get that themselves. This is why we women have to be very cautious when especially us women. We expect way too much from our partners and our spouses that we don't even take responsibility for. And I'm going to call out a lot of women about this too, because when we demand our spouse to get either like a coffee cake or get another like gallon of milk or something, which I'm just going in my head right now, and women would be a little bit more understanding, and they will go get it themselves. But if you have toxic women in your life, okay, I've grown up with this, and they demand that you get the milk and you don't get the milk, they get all riled up and all upset. Understand this. You have some inner issues that you have not met because your mother probably did the same thing to your father. Therefore, you react to situations, circumstances based upon what you saw. And therefore, you wonder why your spouse is not happy with you and doesn't want to be anywhere near you. And it seems never enough. So, and you wonder why they end up going down the road where they want to be understood by someone else. So this is something I had to really understand. So the inner healing work is so important. This is why you take the time, you write it out, take the time to really diagnose yourself a little bit, maybe even go see therapists if that's the case. I had to do that. And I realized the nature that I've grown up with parents who are borderline narcissistic, mixed with codependency and everything else. And I did the work myself for 4 years, really working on it, and opened my eyes to the fact that if I did this to my own son, if I projected a lot of my issues, which I do, by the way, sometimes, but not as much, I've done the work, I'm able to gain better perspective. Consistency is the key, and that's something I lacked in. I never understood what consistency was because I grew up with inconsistent parents. The best way to put this is I grew up in an environment that was consistent at being inconsistent, okay? So when you go to an environment that was consistent at being inconsistent, it was hard for you to stay consistent on a daily basis because the fact that the inconsistency arose a lot of times. And a lot of it has to do with reaction. It has to do with the nature of not really seeing things, from eye to eye in that perspective. But what I had to understand is that I can change that. I don't always have to flip-flop. I can make a decisive decision. I grew up with parents who never made, decisive decisions. They always made me second guess myself all the time. And if I did make a decision, they would say, oh, no, that's not what you really want. And they will make the decision for me, which would create problems for me, which was hard for me to make decisions at all in my life. And it was just like, oh, God. And it's a lot of crazy making involved. I've grown up with verbally abusive situations. I've grown up with emotional, psychological issues. And I was struggling with depression and anxiety. And it's so hard to manage all of that. And I had to understand with my own child involved now with my kid, I have to be very careful not to consistently do things that are very irritating him. He wants to make me happy, but sometimes it's not his job to do that. It's my job. And I realized that certain things like my own anger needs to be dealt with. Like, I shouldn't always, spank him, or, be violent. I'm not saying violent and like 100% terrible, but violent is just like the way, like, just randomly take a book and smack him for no reason. I'm like, why do I do that? Because I grew up in that environment. I'm like, I have to work on that. Sometimes you get these habits inside of you that you end up doing because of the fact that it's what you've noticed. And so we have to be very cautiously aware, and I'll get this more, not to do it. Like, my son has a tendency to keep the markers off its lid, and I'm very, very tight in money. So when you're very tight in money, it makes it hard to have any sort of real tendencies to have, you know, it's just like they don't understand. My kids doesn't understand the factors of money yet, but it's just like you really, when you're tight on money, you have to realize that you can't keep keeping markers like this out and dry up. Like, seriously, like, this is like all dried up now because you left the markers out. And I told my dad, put the markers away. He doesn't do it. And I've grown up with parents who are so defensive and on the fence all the time that makes it hard for me to even, when I make set boundaries with them, I can't even do that very well. I'm just like, here we go again. So I have grown up with adult emotionally immature parents. Adult emotionally immature parents have this problem a lot of times. They are on the defense. They don't want to help you the way you needed to be helped, and it's like you don't know why they create this problem. It's just it's mind blowing. And a lot of my friends are like looking at me like, dude, I don't get your parents, because they don't understand themselves, because they have a lot of pain and issues that they don't deal with that create the problem. And when you have grown up with parents like this, like mine, it can really put you on this fence where it's just like, I just don't know who I am anymore. This is why it's so important to do the work and do, to really see yourself who you are. This is why I journal every day, so I can improve myself, what I can work on, what can I deal with, what I need to see. And I am typing up my book because I think it's so important to share information with others who are struggling as well, and really understand the factors of what this what one per I can't even speak today. Forgive me. It really does help to have other people to really see that you are not the only one. They're not the only one who's dealing with this. There's others out there who struggle with this on a daily basis. And it's just about really producing them. But you can also read my blogs too. My blog channel is my blog is in the description below. So check it out. If you want any more inner healing work done, or if you want to contact me personally and talk to me, you can do that too. It's the link is down below. If you also want to get in touch with me, or you want to get a session with me, if you want to talk, that is also down in the description box as well. So just click the website, and it's very straightforward. So why don't you do that? Anyways, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys next time.